Welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Watch Arnie and I do everything modded Minecraft, and I try and do it with absolutely minimal waffle for you guys and just give you the facts. Today we're looking at Binnies Mods, or as it's more commonly known, Binnies Genetics. The reason it's called Binnies Mods now is because they've amalgamated the multiple mods into one, technically, which is like Binnies Botany, Binnies Genetics, and Binnie Core. The first part of this video is going to be going over the bee breeding and genetics part of it. Then we are going to be going over the random items, alvearies and distilleries, etc. that Binnies Mods add. And then lastly, we're going to be going through the Binnies Botany part of the mod. Now, I guarantee there's going to be something worth it for you in this mod, even if you feel like you already know most of Forestry. There's some really cool items that even I didn't know about when I was researching for this video, so make sure to watch and comment down below one thing that you learned or found most useful from this tutorial. So let's get started. As I said, we are going to be talking about Binnies Genetics first. So there is a large assumption here that I'm making, and that is that you have either already watched my tutorial series on the Forestry mod itself. Remember, this is an add-on mod to Forestry, or that you just have a clear understanding of how the basic bee breeding works in the Forestry mod. You don't need to know the entire mod, you just need to know how bee breeding works. If you have an understanding on that, that's all you need to know. So the first thing you are going to want to make is 5 or 6, make quite a few incubators, okay? First off, we're going to use 4, and I think we're going to use 2 more later. So you're going to want to make 4 incubators like this. The way you make an incubator is just here in JEI. Also, there's another mod you should get if you're doing this called JEI Bees, which shows you the breeding parents for breeding the bees, etc. And that adds into like extra bees, magic bees, Binnies extra bees, etc. That's the other mod that adds Binnies extra bees and trees. So this is how you make the incubator. What you're going to want to do is you're going to want to make growth medium, okay? So I'm using mechanism here. You can use whatever mod you like to input the water and output the items, etc. And in the incubator, and this does have really good tooltips, but you've got me, so don't worry. We are going to put in growth medium into these item slots here and water, and it's going to pull the growth medium into here. Now, growth medium is simply bone meal and sugar, okay? And what this is going to do is it's going to make a liquid growth medium. And all of these machines are going to need to be powered, by the way, with RF. Once you've then got that liquid growth medium, you're going to want to transport it into another incubator. And in this one, we're going to put in our liquid growth medium with wheat, and that's going to turn it into bacteria, okay? What we're going to then want to do with that bacteria is pump it into 2 different incubators. One, we're going to put in the bacteria with bone meal, and it's going to turn it into polymerizing bacteria. The second is we're going to put in the bacteria again, and we're going to use blaze powder in here, and that's going to make bacteria vector, okay? Once we've made those, we're then going to come down here to our next set. So we have another incubator, and here again, we're going to put in, you guessed it, bacteria. And this time we're going to put in sugar. And that sugar is going to make enzymes. It's not going to make any liquid, but it is going to make enzymes. And then the other thing we're then going to want to do is make an isolator. So basically, the first 5 machines that I've just shown you is how we're making some of the materials. Okay, these are the main materials we're going to be using for all our other machines, apart from one other. And that is going to be the gene pool for the raw DNA. So we're going to want to put bees like this into our gene pool, and you can see this progress bar going along. It's such cool animations in this mod. I really love it. And we're going to put an enzyme in here. Okay, so the enzymes that we made over here, remember, with our bacteria and sugar, we're going to put into a gene pool, and it has these cool particle effects. And this is going to just basically melt down the bees into raw DNA to do what we want with. The only other thing you're going to use to actually burn them down with is ethanol, okay? Now, ethanol is made in a still with biomass. Biomass is made in a fermenter like this. But don't worry about that, because here is one I've made earlier. Who would have thought? So, working it back, you're going to want to make a still, okay? And the still is a really easy machine. It's basically No, I don't want to give it to myself. A sturdy casing, redstone and glass. I'm going to assume that you know how to use JEI for most of this tutorial, but you're going to want to make a still, and you put biomass in with power, and it simply just turns it into ethanol. Now, to get the biomass, what you're going to want to do is either use water, fruit juice, or honey in a fermenter, and you're going to want to use compost or fertilizer, you know, the blue fertilizer that you make from apatite, or mulch. You can use any of those three, and then any organic material, and it's going to make biomass. Now, if we actually look at the biomass, you can see here, water will give you 50 millibuckets. This is using mushrooms as an example here. And then using either fruit juice or honey is going to give you 75 millibuckets. Now, it doesn't seem to matter what fertilizer you use, whether it's fertilizer, mulch, or compost. I'm using compost. Compost is literally 4 wheat and a piece of dirt or podzol or coarse dirt, doesn't care. What you will, however, notice is that if I flick through here, you can see different things give different amounts of biomass, right? So if you use, like, generally the further along mutations of forestry or Binnies forestry trees, you're going to get more. Like using a candle nut sapling, it's going to give you 1,125 millibuckets when you use honey. Whereas using a star anise sapling is only going to give you 375. So depending on what trees or what saplings you've already got may determine what ones you'd rather use. But at the end of the day, it's not going to use that much anyway, so it's up to you if you want to min-max that or not. But that is how you make the ethanol you need. So fermenter, basically fruit juice, water, or honey with some biodegradable materials in a fermenter, then pump that biomass into the still and turn it into ethanol. Simple, simple, simple. So remember, you're going to use that ethanol in your gene pool, which is extracting, and you want to use your drones that you don't care about. They're like cannon fodder, okay? You're just melting them down into raw DNA. You don't care with your enzymes and ethanol. The other thing you're going to use ethanol for is an isolator. Now, this is a bit more of a delicate process, and this is where it starts to get a tad complex. So stay with me here. I am going to take some of these out. Here's some I made earlier. Now, you're going to put ethanol in here, so we're still burning down the bee, and we're going to put enzyme in again, and this is going to take quite a while. As you can see how slowly it's going. Now, you're also going to want to put blank sequences in over here. Blank sequences is 2 gold, a glass pane, and some paper. Very simple. And this is going to take a few minutes to complete. Now, when it does finally complete, what you're going to have is a very faint DNA sequence. So, as you may know from my forestry tutorials, each drone has a set of stats, okay? And, you know, it's like how fertile is it? What's its pollination range? Can it fly in the rain? Is it nocturnal or diurnal? You know, does it work in the day or night? Things like that. And what this is going to do is it's going to extract an unknown DNA sequence from this bee. So if you know, basically, if you have a bee that is, say, nocturnal, like the Rocky drones, and you want to implement that DNA into all of your other bees, so that they're all nocturnal as well, so that they work in the day and night as well, because they're still going to be diurnal, remember. What this is basically to do is you'd keep pushing through the Rocky drones, hoping that one of these DNA sequences is going to be the nocturnal, DNA. So you're isolating the DNA strands, basically, is how you can think of it. Now, what you're going to want to do with these random, unknown DNA sequences is you're going to want to either sequence them or polymerize them. Now, if you see on here, they are very faint, okay? So we can put that in here, and you can see this beautiful DNA strand particles going on, and you can see it's a quite slow process, but this DNA sequence is being polymerized. So we're adding in the polymerizing bacteria and the raw DNA, and it's basically going to turn it from very faint to like faint, normal, strong, very strong. And the stronger it is, the better, right? Because then what we're going to want to do, or you can skip that step and go straight to the sequencer and use a very faint one, we want to sequence this DNA sequence. We want to say, what is this DNA sequence? You know, what the hell is in that DNA? I've got to know. And this is a very long process here. It's a really cool process, though. You can see the letters are gonna start lighting up over a very slow amount of time. And once it gets to here, you're not actually going to get anything for it. You're going to get a blank sequence at the end, but it will tell you what you've actually sequenced and the DNA you have discovered. Now, you are going to need fluorescent dye in here, which is yellow dye, glowstone dust, and orange dye. And to actually see the things that you have found, and it says here, the sequencer takes unsequenced serums and determines which allele is present in them. This process is slow and requires the use of fluorescent dye. Now, this one's nearly done, so while we're waiting for that, you can get a gene database. Now, the gene database is made in the Carpenter, the original Forestry one, with 4 diamonds, some obsidian, a glass pane, an eye of ender and 2 redstone, and some water. That's going to make a gene database. Now, I've already discovered 1 or 2 genes earlier when I was preparing for this video. So if we go into our gene database, you can see there's tree genes to find, flower genes, butterflies and moths, and bees. And you can see here that the only gene I have found, which is the one I was prepared earlier, is cathermal. I don't know what that means. Does anyone know what it means? Let me know in the comments below. Cathermal? No, I'm not actually sure. But that is the one that we've sequenced. And this means that we can use this now whenever we want, and we can implant that DNA, like genetic profile, into our bees. Now you can see here, full genome project, 1 out of 1036. And there's stats and ranking, but it doesn't seem to have anything on here. That might be for servers. I'm not actually sure myself. But basically, when this is done, we're going to have that gene added into our repository of our database. Now, what you can make is a lab stand, which is quite simply made like this with a reinforced casing. A lab stand, you can put your gene database on, and then you can just look at it like this. So it's quite cool having this, and you can have it the same way with your Lepidopterists database, which is for the butterflies. You could do it with your arborists database, etc. on these lab stands, and you can come back and say, you know, hoo-hoo, what ones do I have? You know, this is the gene database. And then you can see here, there's also a apiarist database, there's a Lepidopterists one, and an arborists one, etc. that you can get as well. So you can see in here now that this one in the polymerizer is sequencing again. So it's already gone through once, and it's gone from very faint to faint. And you can see here that the gene is a bit more full. So again, I'm going to leave that and just wait for it to do its thing. Once you've got the genes you want, and etc., etc., we're going to then move on to these 3 machines down here. The first one is an analyzer. Now, if you're looking at a bee and you're like, well, I don't even know what this bee has. Well, you can analyze it. Basically, you can put a bee in here with some DNA dye, and you can see this pretty little situation going across here. Now, DNA dye is simply purple dye and glowstone dust, or magenta, purple, and pink dye. And when this is analyzed, you can then see everything about it. It's diurnal, it's nocturnal, the temperature and humidity allowance, how short of a life it has, how fast of a worker is it a tolerant flyer or not? So we've now analyzed this bee. It's a very simple process. So the next thing we now want to do is start inoculating our bees. Now that we've analyzed them, we've been extracting DNA, we want to actually inoculate a bee with one of the traits. So we're going to make something called an empty serum vial, which is simply made like this, or we're going to make an empty serum array. Now that just takes 9 of them. So if we go into our database and right click it, we can then go down to bees, and we can take our empty serum vial and click it on here for the cathermal no. And this is going to give us an apiarist serum. So now that we have actually found and taken the genes that we want, etc., etc., we're going to obviously want to actually start using those genes and putting them in to our bees. Now, unfortunately, you can't put them into drones. You do need to put them into larvae. So what I've got going on here is a serum with the cathermal no is being polymerized, because you need to make, you need to put the DNA in there to make it work. So we're going to use an empty serum vial made like this, and there's also arrays, and an array is made with 9 of them, and that can use one of every single trait. So you're going to make one of those. You're going to wander over here to your DNA bank, and then you're going to get the serum and click it like that. And that's going to assign it to the conformal no. If I had multiple, I could do boom, 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 and select one of each trait in the array. And then you're going to want to come over to your polymerizer and replicate it. So it's going to basically add raw DNA to this serum so that we can then use the DNA assigned to conformal and inoculate those larvae. So while that's doing that, we're going to run all the way over here to our alveary and look at how we can actually get larvae. So from Forestry, you know that you can make alvearies. Now, Binny adds some cool items. There is the mutator, which speeds up mutation chance. Soul Sand is 1.5, Ender Pearl is 2.0, and Eyes of Ender is 4 times multiplicative of mutation chance. Then there is the hatchery. Now, this is where you're going to get the larvae coming out, basically. It collects larvae laid by queen bees inside the alveary, and that's the ones we're going to be inoculating. There's also the frame housing, which lets you put in 1 of any frame for the alveary. There is the rain shield, which shields them from the rain. There is the alveary lighting, which, as you can imagine, lights it up so that daytime bees will work at night. And then we have the alveary transmission, and this is a bit of a weird one. I couldn't really find the info on this, apart from it accepts power and distributes it between all other alveary blocks that accept power. So I guess this is, I don't know what ones take power in here, but that's how you let the power in to power it, which is interesting. But yes, that's how you do the hatchery for those. We're going to then come back over to our polymerizer, and you can see here, this one is going along and it's now got 1 charge. So we're going to take that out. We've put it full of DNA, well, for 1 charge. We've got our larvae, and then we're going to put it in here. It's a very slow process again, and we're going to inoculate it with this gene, conformal no. Once you've got your larvae, we can then leave it in an incubator, yes, another incubator, with some growth medium, and it will turn into a drone. And you can see here on some of the items as well, it says item loss 100%. So you will lose the larvae. Things like wheat, I think, in the incubators, it's like a 50% chance to lose them, etc. This is going to be a 100% chance. That's how that works. So now we have basically inoculated these genes. You can also, in the gene isolation, in the isolator, use larvae as well. You can inoculate, and you can also melt them down into DNA for the ones you don't want, same as you can with drones. So that is pretty much it for all of that. And you can see here, really cool effects again. So last but not least is the acclimatizer. And you're going to go in here, put your bee in, and then down here, you're going to put in acclimatizing items. So you can use water or sand to basically up or lower their humidity tolerance. And then you're going to use things like lava or ice, and that is going to lower or add to their temperature tolerance. So that's it for the genetics part of this video. Now we're going to look at the random items that the mod adds. So there's these really cool compartments, and these are actually really underappreciated, in my opinion. This is the basic compartment, and it has 4 slots, which is basically 4 chests. You can search like this, including blocks, items, and A to Z. And then you can actually like name each tab, give it an icon, and you can change the color. So we can make this one blue, give it a name, etc. Then you can see that the copper one is 6 slots, and then iron is 4 slots, but they're huge. Gold is 6 slots, but they're huge. And diamond is 8 slots, but they're also huge. Okay, these are the compartments. Then we've got these cool machines, and there's a very interesting one too. We have the tile worker. Now, basically, you can make ceramics, right, with gold clay, which is clay and a gold pigment. Now, the pigments come from the botany side of the mod, which we're going to be going into after this section. So the pigments, you've made your ceramics, you put them in there with some mortar, which is clay and gravel. And then what you can do is you can change the colors around like this. See, now it's white on the outside and yellow on the middle, and swap it again. and then you can pick a pattern like this. So it's actually like crazy amounts of customization you can do with all different colors. It's like 80 colors or something like that. Then we have the lumber mill. This one's a bit simpler. It's basically going to chop your logs into planks and give you bark and sawdust. Sawdust can also be used to make paper, and you put in water. It's a cool way of automating that. Then we have the woodworker, which is pretty much the same as the tile worker, but you've got two different types of wood. So you can see it swaps where they are on the grid, and you can choose different patterns. It's amazing. The panel worker is the same, but with these ones use wood polish, which is beeswax in the carpenter, with turpentine, which is what you get from resin in the steel. Resin is from squeezing random objects like wood. Then we have the fruit press, which is really cool. I'm going to put my oranges in here. It's going to press it into orange juice. Who would have thought? Then we have the brewery, which is quite a complex one when you first look at it, that is. You're going to want to put yeast in here. We're going to put in here barley grain and then any brewing item. And for this recipe example, it's making fermented grain mash. So the items you're actually going to use are down here, same as the carpenter, etc. And this is the recipe up here. And if we look at the brewery in JEI, you can see here all the different things that you can make with it, which is really, really cool. For example, with the fermented wheat mash, we are then putting it into the distillery, the fermented grain mash. We're then distilling that in a distillery and making whiskey. With the whiskey, you can actually do really cool things with it, like put it into a wine glass from Binnies Extra Trees mod, which I think is really cool, especially like if you're playing on a server and stuff, I guess. And last but not least, on this part, you have the glass worker. Again, you've got the pigmented glass from all the Botany pigments. So now you're asking, how the hell do I get the pigments? Well, it's your lucky day. I'm going to show you. So see this grass here? You see this grass? We're going to get our wooden trowel and trowel it like this, which is going to say soil. Now, there is different versions of the trowel, like there's the soil meter, and then you have a stone, wooden, diamond, etc. And the soil meter, we can click on the soil and see about it. So we can see that the pH is acidic, the moisture is normal, and it's soil, funnily enough. And what we can then do is use things like ash powder, wood pulp powder. Oh, a weed has grown. I can't believe it. Not in my garden. Binny will not be happy. We can use mulch powder and sulfur powder. And I'll show you the powders in here, which are these ones here. To make them, you are going to want to use either ash or wood pulp or mulch, etc. And you're going to get the powders. So what these do is ash powder is going to increase the pH of one soil block. Wood pulp is going to use, it's also going to increase the pH. Mulch is going to lower the pH. Sulfur powder is going to lower the pH. And fertilizer powder is going to increase the nutrient content. So is compost. Mortar is an adhesive. Oh, no, we know about mortar. You can also use weed killers on the soil to prevent the growth of weed. So weed killer is this here. And it's just a spider's eye with some seeds. So if we sprinkle that on here, you can see then the weed killer on there. And that's killed that nasty weed. What we can then do is look at all the flowers. And you can do at Botany to just get the botany part of this mod. And you can see there's all these different flowers and pollens, etc. And if you put, including the vanilla flowers, these are going to breed. So if we had like one here and one here, they're going to cross-pollinate into this slot. And you can then look at actually breeding flowers. And if we press R on the aquilegia, you can see an iris and a poppy will make this flower. Now, they will actually cross-pollinate. They will germify? What's the word? They'll cross-pollinate, you know. So basically, if we had like two of these here and here, they would cross-pollinate, and then you would get a little germling or a seedling here, and then it will grow up into a fully grown flower. If, however, you put them like the hydrangea on soil, just like so on dirt, not like this fancy botany soil, if you put it on just normal dirt like this, it will be purely aesthetical, and that's it. Now, this flower is wilting because the soil isn't what it likes, and you have to find out, what soils they like, etc. I would probably just use the wiki for that, or you can kind of, find it out yourself as you're breeding in different flowers, etc. But it will wilt and then it will die if you don't look after it. If you want to increase the wetness of soil, you can put water next to it, like here, or you can put sand here to dry it out. What you can then do on the soil, once you have used the trowel on it, is you can use bone meal. And what the bone meal is going to do is it's going to give it a flower bed so it can turn it into loam. Loam increases the lifespan and pollination by 1.25 times, and a flower bed increases it by 1.5 times. Loam is visibly greener than soil, and a flower bed has small little colourful flowers in it, which is really lovely, if you ask me. There is something called gardens, but I don't think they were ever implemented, unfortunately, which worked as like kind of a greenhouse. It would just always like work underneath it. You can use shears to also cut the flowers, and it's going to drop a germling, which is a clone of the parent, and it can be only done on fully grown, opened, and flowering flowers, because it's like germling, then unflowered, flowering, then wilting, and dead. Pollen from the flowers can also be transferred by the bees and butterflies as well. And that will also, in a similar way to tree breeding, breed the flowers around, which I think is really cool. Botany is definitely something that I've not gotten into myself, and it's actually the only part of the mod I've never played myself. But I'm really excited to, and I now play on a server because if you don't already know, I actually run a 12 mod pack network on Discord, free for everyone to join. No paywalls into joining or anything like that. We have loads of players. We have like all the mods 8, Vault Hunters, Greg Technical Horizons, RL Craft, all that cool stuff. There's 12 of them. So click the Discord link down below. And you can try out this mod because it is actually in GTNH, and I'm going to be trying it out on stream about 5 minutes after I finish this filming this video. Well, Forestry anyway. I'm not quite onto Binnies yet. But thank you so much for watching, guys. I hope this tutorial was really helpful. I'm aware that the previous videos on this mod are like 8 years old, so hopefully this is a more up-to-date and refreshed version for you all of you Forestry fans out there. And yeah, please do subscribe. I'm really trying to get to 1,000 subscribers at the moment, and we're getting there ever so slowly. But yes, I hope to see you next week's video. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.